Hello and welcome to Nagash Architecture, and in this video I'm going to walk you through how you can render an old cabin in Twinmotion 2023. This is a model from Autodesk Revit, and in this video I'm going to show you how you can actually import the model, add on materials, and also create the environment, the vegetation, and the lighting to actually help bring your visualization to life. Now Twinmotion is an architecture and product visualization tool. It's quite useful for civil engineers, architects, and anybody that is trying to visualize a model really, and also for product developers as well. If you're trying to visualize your product and trying to see it in real time, what it looks like in reality, it's quite a very useful tool for you. So you can go on to learn this visualization tool. It's very useful. So we have a Revit model here. It's actually an IFC, but you can see the surface, and currently there's also a kind of pond in between. It's just outside the building, and yeah, you can see basically what the building looks like. So what we're going to do first is actually use a direct link to import this model into Twinmotion. And so I have here Datasmith. You can download this Datasmith file from the Twinmotion website, and then once you go on to install it, it's going to have this plugin in here, and then you can go straight there and then export the Datasmith file. So that's the first thing we're going to click. Go over here and then export Datasmith file. So let me just give it a different name. Let's just call it 2. Once the model is imported, you can come into Twinmotion and then go on to click import, and then you're going to see a plus sign in here. Go ahead and just click that plus sign, and then it should take you to direct link. It has identified the Revit export model, and go ahead and click import. So now that the model is in there, we can see the chain link, and then I'm going to go over and just delete this Twinmotion's default model here. So I'm going to just click on the starting base and then hit delete. Yeah, that should be gone. So now that our model is in here, we're going to go back to Revit and synchronize this model to actually remove the broken chain link that is here. So now that we're inside Revit, I'm just going to take one last view at this and then go over to this portion here where it says direct link. Go ahead and click synchronize. Now you can see that the model is actually processing, so we're going to just wait a few more seconds, and yeah, so here we are. This is what the model looks like in Twinmotion. You can see that there aren't any materials assigned to this, so that's going to be the basis of what we're doing in this video, to try and assign materials and also assign the environment to Twinmotion and try to bring this old cabin to life. So when I'm modeling in Twinmotion, I'm visualizing an architectural model. I like to start small and then go and scale up all the way to the environment. So we're going to start with the building first, and the first thing I'm going to do is actually begin from the roof. And in Twinmotion, I'm going to just use the icon, the material picker here, and then go over to the roof and then select the material for the roof. It's going to show me the default material from Revit or the Revit IFC. So I'm just going to go over to material and then choose a roof covering, something default, roof covering 01. Not going to go anything too fancy, just drag and drop this icon. You can drop it over on the roof here, or you can drop it on the sphere that is on the right hand side. So any one that you choose, just go ahead and do that. Now you can see that our roof is in place, and then the next thing I'm going to do is actually scale this up a bit to actually make the roof look the way it is. Now if I zoom into the roof, pressing the W key to go a lot closer to the roof, I can see how small the scale is. So what I want to do is to actually increase that scale for the roof. You can go to the down right here, the bottom right, you can see UV. Under the UV menu, you can see the scale is currently set to 1, so I can go over here and type in 2.5. yeah, the scale of the roof goes on to increase, and you can see the roof panels a lot clearer now. I'm going to increase this with the bar here. Just slide it. You can see you can actually go on to increase it like this. So I'm going to just increase this to maybe 5 or 4.5. It looks good. 4.54, that should be okay. But yeah, it kind of gives me what I'm looking for and brings the roof panel to life. Next, we're going to apply a material to the roof piping system, and normally I want this to be white plastic, so I'm going to have to search deeply. I can just use the mouse, click into open space and hover and kind of orbit like this. If you left click and then move your mouse around, this the movement that you're going to get. If you right click, you're going to come somehow pan left and right like this. So we're just going to go back and try to look for our piping system. Use the same material picker like this, and then go ahead and select the piping system. So we see the material for the piping on the right hand side. Same method, go over to the material and then look for, I'm going to look for plastic for some reason. And there's this 3D wall. Let's just find something else that could be interesting. Styrofoams, not really. 3D walls 2. Okay, I kind of like this non-slip flooring, but I'm going to have to change the color from yellow to white. So first of all, we're going to move that in here and have that, so we can see our piping system. It's all over the building and it's currently yellow, but we need to move that, change it from this orange kind of color and move it all the way to white, so we have something that we can work with. So that looks better for our piping system. Now you won't really notice it currently because it's blending again with the entirety of the building. So the next we're going to do is to actually change the wood. Try to pick one of the materials in the building and then make it wooden. So going to look for wooden material now. I like this non-slip red cedar material. So what I'm going to do is to just click this, and instead of just going for the material pick, I can literally just drag this over and find the material that I want to switch with. And yeah, that looks good. So once I have this in place, you can see that it's still looking tiny. So I'm going to want to scale this up a bit, so you can go over to UV and scale it up and down anyhow you want it to be. I'm going to scale it up to see what I get from scaling it up. Okay, not bad. We can just leave it like that. And then next is actually add material to the walls, and I'm going to use wood sliding, something very simple. I'm going to just drag and drop it over on the building like this, and it's coming off brown, but I want it to have a bright feel, a bright white color. So I'm going to shift this all the way to white and maybe increase the luminosity a bit, and of course go over to the scale as well, shift the scale all the way up to 10. Now you notice that there's a vertical feel on how the wood sliding is displayed. So what I want to do is to change that rotation. You can go back to the rotation under UV as well and change this from 0 degree to maybe 90 degree. That's going to make it horizontal, and yeah, so that's what we're looking for. Now you notice that the lighting is quite poor in this current view that we're using, and that's because we're designing currently on low resolution. So what I'm going to do is go over to the preferences in Twinmotion, look for quality, and then try to change the quality from low to medium to try and bring in more shadows and lighting to what we're working with. So I'm going to just hit OK, and yeah, we can see a better lighting in there now. I'm going to also rotate the time of day, try to bring it to a different time of day to get a view of what our colors look like on this other side. It's still looking gray most of the parts of our building, but that's okay. It's going to get better as we continue. So the next part is this pillars and the staircase. So what I'm going to do is actually include concrete, this material. So I'm going to go over to concrete on the left hand side here, and then we can just pick one of the concrete material that looks good. I'm going to look for something smooth. Here's soft concrete. I think this is nice. We're going to just click and drag the soft concrete over onto the building, and there we go. So we now have our concrete in place, and we also want to scale it so you can see, or we can actually look away from the pattern. So I'm going to scale the concrete just the same way. Go over to the UV, drag it all the way up, perhaps 7.5 looks fine. Once that's in there, we've got our scaling, and we need to actually work on the background. So most of our building is coming to life. We can move over to the environment very soon. And the last thing we want to look at is the floor. I'm going to use wooden flooring for this case. So I'm going to go back to wood and then go on to pick chestnut. I think I like this one. Go on to click the flooring. Once that's in there, I'm going to go over to chestnut, drag it in, move it all the way down here and over to the sphere there. So that's our wood flooring. The next move to make is to go over and scale it up so you can see the way it's supposed to appear, all the way to 10, and that's the way I want my wood to look. These chairs outside, I think I'm also going to apply material to them. You can find fabric just under or just beside leather. You scroll down a bit on materials, go over to fabric, and I'm going to look for something bright. Red looks nice, so we're just going to drag this red fabric over and drop it on the material. So there we go, we have our red fabric. I can also scale this as well. Give me 5.0, still too much. 2.5. Yeah, I kind of prefer 2.5 for this. So there we go. So we can start working on the environment now, and I'm going to start from the grass, the floor. It looks green and plain and there's nothing really happening here, so we're going to just tilt this a little bit, go all the way up, and then zoom out. You can use the mouse wheel to scroll out of your building, and then you can see the grass the way it's supposed to be. And we're going to actually apply a grass material to this. So go back to material as well, all the way to ground, and ground is split into two. So we're going to choose nature and forest or grassy ground. Looks good because this is an old cabin, so we're going to try to bring its grassy ground and try to make it have that feel of, like, you know, they're in a forest somewhere. Now it looks plain brownish green now, so you can zoom inside, pressing the letter W to go a lot closer into the building, and you're going to see that we still need to scale the grassy ground model. So we're going to go over to luminosity. I can actually tone this down a bit. For grunge, you can use grunge, add wear and tear to your material, but I'm going to darken the floor a little bit because I will still paint grass over this. So I can go ahead and increase the grunge to make it look slightly more rough like that. We can scale this one up as well, just push it. So yeah, our grass is coming into place now. There's now part for the water material, so that's what we're going to add next immediately after the ground. It's like a simple pond that is supposed to be here. So we're going to go over to material and then look for water. There we go. It's not a river, it's not a sea, it's just a lake, but not a dark lake. I want something brown and transparent, or something bright and transparent. So I'm going to use lake number 2 and just drag that over to the water here. There. So now we have our lake. We need to start adding life into this place. So start with the grass material. And what I want to do is to paint a kind of vegetation over this surface, so it's not just plain like this. I don't really enjoy the plain triangles that I'm seeing, so we can actually convert that and try to add some more grass. So what we're going to do is to go over to populate in the bottom center here, select populate, and then click on foliage on the right hand side and go over to grasses and flowers. You can see trees. You can also paint trees and bushes and rocks as well, but we're going to start with grasses for now, and after that we can go over to the trees. So first I'm going to paint some wild grass over the corners. So what I'm going to do is to select wild grass. You can go on to click paint first. When you go on to click paint on the right hand side, it's going to show you your canvas, and then you can actually drag what you want to paint, like wild grass for example. It's just drag it over here and then drop it in this sphere. Now when that's done, you can go on to click this button here that says paintbrush tool. It's going to actually bring on the sphere for you to actually go about starting your paint job. So first I'm going to just click it, and you can see our wild grass in there. So we now have to do this for all the corners because I want my wild grass to be on the corners. You can move your hand over like this and kind of just like a normal paintbrush, you know, just move it like that. Not forcing myself to go too close to the building itself, because if you try to paint on the building, you can actually somehow paint over it. So watch what happens if I go on to do this. You can see grass on top of the building, and that's not what we want. So I'm just going to undo that, Ctrl Z. And yeah, so try to avoid the building. So I'm done adding the grass for now, and first of all let me just reduce the brightness. It's quite bright right now, so I'm just going to reduce the brightness to get something around 7. This is the time. So now instead of grass, I want to paint some rocks over this little pond that we have here, because the triangles are not really helping. So I'm just going to use my paintbrush tool. I have the rock selected, same method I used to drag and drop, and then I'm just going to click on these edges here. And okay, I don't enjoy how this is happening, so I'm going to have to edit this a bit more. So let's just finish what we're doing and try to add some more rocks on either side of the pond like this. So now that that's done, I can now go over and manually drag and drop the rocks. We have one here. I'm just going to pick another one that's slightly bigger. This one looks quite big, so what I'm going to do is actually scale this rock down. You can press the number 9 on the keyboard to bring on the scale gizmo. Scale gizmo looks like a square on the other side, so I'm just going to hold the center and drag it forward and backward, actually make it bigger or smaller, anyhow you want it to be. I want mine to be smaller, so I'm just going to move it all the way like that, and go on to press number 7 on the keyboard again to go back to the normal gizmo that has a lot to do with movement. So I can now move my rock around and find a good position for it to sleep. Probably this might want to go smaller again. Yep, just do that. Press number 7 and then try and keep my rock in here. I'm going to drag this other rock to cover this position. And then of course there are smaller rocks that are here. It's not bad. So we're just dropping rocks now. So finally, before we go on to the trees, I'm going to paint some lilies about this pond and trying to cover the remaining spaces with lilies. So I'm going to go back to click grass and then slide all the way down. It's called ling heather, so I'm going to drag it on like this and then try to paint it over. So same method that we used. Try to click 250 for centimeter of the brush. Oh, that's a lot, but it's all good. We're just going to click and, you know, populate. I can obviously reduce the density of these lilies, but we're going to get to that shortly. I'm just going to click over and try to have my lilies where I want them to be. So I want them to be around the pond like this, and try to get any spaces that we have and make sure that there are lilies everywhere. I'm just going to add a few more in this corner here and a few more here. You can go ahead and press escape to cancel this, and then go ahead and click on those lilies, or you can select them from the, and yeah, this looks better. So all we have to do now is to continue including the background. So the next is to now add the trees. So I've used the same method that I used to add grass to also add trees to the building. Now everything is starting to have some life, And the next thing we're going to do is actually deal with the background, and the background is currently set, it's currently white really, so there's nothing there. It's like we're in complete white space. So I'm going to just press Q and go all the way up, and I'm going to use the material picker to actually go on to pick the background. You can see that it goes on to select starting. It shows floor tiles because that's actually what it is, but you can see there's a starting ground and then there's also a landscape ground. It can see that it's selected in here. So what we're going to do is to go over to the library and then go over to vegetation, and then you can see landscapes in here. Now instead of the flat landscape, I can actually go on to choose a flat landscape, but I'm going to pick rocky grasslands instead because both of them are actually useful for the same thing I want to do, but the rocky grassland is already a step ahead, so we're going to try to use that one. Once that's dropped in, we can see the rocky grassland in place. You can also see our floor tiles. They're quite stubborn, but we're going to move them really quickly now. So the starting landscape, I can actually go and press the I button here right beside it and try to uncheck that. It goes away. Uncheck the starting ground as well. And yeah, so we have our rocky grassland and the normal surface that came with our building, even though it's looking really shaded here. To actually remove this noise that is happening here, it's kind of graphic noise. we're going to sculpt the terrain to actually go over it. So first thing I'm going to do, if you zoom in to like just press Q or letter E, I'm going to use Q this time, and you can see that there's a space underneath the surface right here. So we're going to zoom, we're going to just lift the starting ground surface to come closer to, okay, that didn't do anything. We have to find the rocky grassland surface instead, not the starting ground, because we've actually disabled that. So we're going to select the rocky grassland and then find the gizmo for the rocky grassland. In case you're looking for a gizmo and you can't find it, just press the letter F. It's going to take you to where it is, even though we're far away from it now. So now that we're in there, we can now zoom in again. If you're zooming in too slow, press the number 6 or 5. It's going to take you to the highest speed. You can see it up here, speed. So what I want to do is to zoom. We have the gizmo here already. It's really high up. So we're going to use this gizmo and then raise the rocky grassland. I can just hold it over here and then slowly move the rocky grassland up till it's close enough to the building. So that's perfect actually. So we have it close enough, but some areas are still stubborn. So we're going to use the sculpt and raise tool. We're going to use this raise button here. Once you go and select raise in the sculpt tool, once the rocky grassland is selected, this option is actually going to come up. You can see landscape in here. So you can now just click above this. It's going to somehow mold the surface higher and try to cover up that space. So in case you have errors in your surface that look like that, you can actually go ahead and just mask them over with the rocky grassland like this. So I've gone around the building and tried to sew up most of the edges, but you notice that there's a sculpt tool and then there's also a paint tool. So some of the material from the forest ground is not the same as the material on the rocky grassland. What we can do about that is just to paint over it. So I'm just going to select the paint button here. You can see there's grass, there's grassy ground. I'm going to select grassy ground, and it's the same, just like the sculpt tool, you're going to get a paint tool. So I'm just going to just paint over this, and then you can see that it's replacing the material with what normally would be grassy ground. So the scale is somewhat different, so we can actually shift the scale to match that of the current building that we're looking at. I just took it down to 0, and then it looks similar now. They are kind of equal. So I'm just going to continue painting over the rocky grassland and try to have it the same as the one that we're currently looking at. So now we are almost done. We're just going to need to add some animated characters and also the background, forest and vegetation. So first we're going to start with somebody sitting on this lovely couch. So let's go over to material and then select characters. You can look for an animated human being, and yeah, we're going to scroll down to, let's start with her, Michelle. Just drag Michelle over. She's not really dressed for countryside business, but anyway, you can zoom into Michelle and see how you can actually make her sit on the couch. So what you're going to do is to actually go over to the bottom left and the bottom right, sorry. You can see she's currently idle, and just change that to sitting. And now that she's sitting, you can actually rotate the character using the gizmo, just like every other element in Twinmotion. Once that's done, we can find a way to now move her over to the chair. Now the gizmo works like this, in the sense that if you click this semi hemisphere here, you can move the person all around left, right and center, but not up and down. But the arrows that go up and down can help you move the character up and down, or any item on Twinmotion up and down. But the left and right lines that are here just outside the semi hemisphere, if you click that, you're moving in just one direction. So that's what we want to do. We're going to try to move Michelle into one direction, and yeah, she's close enough to the chair now, but it's not perfect. So we can zoom in with the mouse wheel scroll, and then once we're in there, you can now drag it away from the chair so she's not just stuck into it like that. And then yeah, so she's just sitting, but that's not really cool. Taking selfies. Okay, we're going to pick sitting number 2. We're fine with that. The next is to actually add 2 people dancing on this left hand corridor, more like a veranda really. So I'm going to just pick one character from below. Yeah, Emily. So you can drag her on and just drop her on the corridor veranda like this. Rotate the character just like you did last time, and then go over to dancing. You have dancing in there. You can use the arrow like this on the lines to actually move the character inward a bit. And yeah, we have our one character dancing, and then next is to find somebody to dance with. There's Kayla here, so you don't want her to stand on the railing though, so you're going to take her close to Emily like this and then switch to dancing as well. So now you have 2 people dancing, and that's a start. The next is to add more people in the normal vegetation like this. So scooting, taking photos, feeding pigeons. Okay, we're already selecting feeding pigeons. We can throw in Michael into the mix as well, and then have him also join in feeding pigeons. Oh, Michael decides to play piano, so we're just going to change that to feeding pigeons. And yeah, now we have 2 people feeding pigeons, and then we can move him slightly to the right. And okay, next we're going to add vehicles on the left and on the right hand side, and then honestly we are almost done. So go over to vehicles and then cars. We're going to pick cars that are actually suitable for the countryside. One is an SUV with an open back, what you would normally call a pickup truck. So we're going to just drag that on in here. It's quite close to where everybody is, but we can always move that in Twinmotion. So we can just zoom out like this, rotate the car a little bit, and then pull it all the way from where they are into the background. So the next is actually pick a second vehicle, also an SUV. I think I like this one that is looking blue. So I'm just going to drop that in here and also rotate it to kind of face where they are. And yeah, we have to build 2 cars in the building. Now that we have a few characters in there, it's time to add some animals, and then we're going to go same way to the library, go over to the characters, go over to animals, and then I like Market the cow, so you can move her away from where everybody is somehow. Just add her into the background in here. That seems good. We're going to rotate the cow again. We're going to have Gazelle also be in the background near where the cattle is. Have Gazelle somewhere in there, this time facing the opposite direction. And then of course you can add a horse. Enjoy. Have the horse in the background like this. You can also turn the horse on this other side. And yeah, one more thing, I'm going to add some rocks into the environment. Go over to vegetation, rocks, and pick something that is slightly bigger than usual, perhaps rock number 1, and then have it in the background like this. So the next thing we're going to do is to actually include the background vegetation. So I'm going to just zoom out carefully, and we're going to populate the entire background of this building with trees. So what we're going to do is go over to populate, and then on the paint option, switch to trees. This time we're going to add a lot of trees because we want to mask the background that is just completely blank. So we're going to move this as many trees as we can actually add, even the trees that I was scared to add before. So just drag them in there, and over on the side we can just click and drag where we want all our trees to be. So with that said, we have most of the job done. So that's how you can go about creating an old cabin. And then yeah, we can now zoom in carefully, and we have most of our population almost done. So the next thing we're going to do is to take a photograph of this in a way that looks cool. We can take a shot from here and just click the image button on that picture and go on to click one picture and accept. Create an image like this, and then you can obviously change what you want from the image, the time of day, the exposure, how you want the image to be. We're just going to leave it in early hours of the morning like this. That's fine. We have our one image selected, and then we can go on to render that image very soon. We can go on to select a second image, probably from a closer view of where the car is. It also gets the mountains. So this is also a second view that we can work with. Go ahead and just click plus and add a second view of the building, including the cars. I'm just going to change the time again, this time to show what looks like evening. I think this looks good, so we're going to use this. This is probably going to be the final image, and then once that's done and you have your 3 images all set, videos, you can use the same process, but that's something we can get into in a different video, how to go on to make the moving video. And I'm going to just hit export now, and you can go over to image, go over to the image that you selected, click the plus sign that is here. Then you can select all the images that you want to be exported in your Twinmotion model, and then scroll down, and then you can see start export. Go over to export the building.